A lot of people tend to fear the turbocharger. Turbochargers are actually great for producing more performance, more power, and in some cases more efficiency. Now, a lot of manufacturers are doing it for different reasons. When you're talking about a Porsche does it for performance reasons, primarily to add power, add performance. So they quite often do things that create better designs. They add better cooling, better oiling, and design engines that can tolerate the extra boost pressure. So they build engines that have a lower static compression ratio. Then you have a lot of other manufacturers. The vast majority of them create turbo engines where they once had a larger displacement naturally aspirated engine, and now they've replaced it with a smaller engine. Mercedes, for example, used to have a 3.5 liter V6. Now they swapped that out effectively with a 2-liter turbocharged 4, and they're doing that for efficiency, for emissions. The vast majority of the manufacturers out there are downsizing their engines. And while the majority of us prefer to have a naturally aspirated engine that's simpler, more reliable, more robust, there are YouTubers out there that spout on about turbochargers being the most unreliable. They're actually not. It comes down to two things. One is design. So if you're buying a garbage manufacturer, in my opinion, like Kias and Hyundais that don't necessarily build a quality engine around adding extra boost pressure, you're going to have problems. If you buy a Porsche that knows how to build a proper turbo engine, you won't have the problems. But the second component is maintenance and how you take care of it, looking after that vehicle that has a turbocharged engine. A bigger issue to some of these vehicles now are things like variable valve timing, other things like direct injection, create all kinds of other anomalies and issues, but the turbochargers themselves are less of an issue. But there are problems if you run them hard and you don't take care of them. Here we have a turbo that I took out of one of my old cars. This is from a Porsche 911 Turbo from many years ago. This is a result of just age, and eventually most turbos can wear out if you don't take care of them. This one here went because of a bearing issue and a seal. Now, some of that, of course, hard use. This car was tracked for quite some time, so extensive use at high RPM, high boost pressures can, of course, naturally wear out the engine. But when you think about a turbo in general, you have oiling that goes in. You have the cold side here, which you can see the turbine housing right here, which re-injects the pressurized air into the intake. And of course, this is the hot side, what they call a hot side. This bolts up to your exhaust system. So your exhaust system gets this turbocharger spinning. It starts up that prime mover, which of course that exhaust temperatures and pressures and velocities gets this side moving as well and adds boost pressure into the engine. There's two things to think about. Number one is, how do we prevent this bearing that this rotates on from seizing up? And two, how do we just generally make this turbocharger last a lot longer? You look at these older turbos, they are literally only cooled as well as lubricated by oil. That's right, oil is one of the most important factors. The old engines, it wasn't that critical. You just make sure your oil levels are topped right up and make sure you're using the right grade of oil as per the manufacturer's instructions. You change them when you need to. Generally, the best practice is changing your oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles at very most. And with a lot of these OEMs now saying, you know what, you can change your oil every 10,000 miles, that's absolutely ludicrous. The manufacturers strictly do not care about how long the vehicle lasts as long as it lasts outside of the warranty period. Poor oil maintenance usually means that you're going to have breakdown sludge, you're going to have contaminants, you're going to have grit that not only goes around through the engine, but also makes its way through the oiling system, of course, in the turbos. You've got oil lines here that allow oil to go through in here, fed through the bearing to keep that turbocharger lubricated, and then it goes out through the scavenge port, which goes back into the engine. So a lot of these OEMs are trying to compete. In other words, less maintenance means less cost out of your pocket. People love hearing buzzwords, you know, maintenance free, lifetime fluids. They love that because it sells cars. What also sells cars are maintenance plans. So when you walk into the dealership and they try to sell you on an extended maintenance plan, and it's a 3-year plan and it gives you all the included maintenance, well, what do you think they're going to do? They want to do less for that money. So they're going to draw out those maintenance schedules. What should be happening is oil changes every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. They're going to try to back it with some kind of nonsense, some kind of BS science, and tell you that you're good for 10,000 miles for an oil change, when we all know that's bung. If it was just a standard garden variety NA engine that didn't have variable valve timing, you'd be good. But the problem is a lot of these vehicles now with PCV systems, direct fuel injection, which carbons everything up, oil now, which runs things like variable valve timing, the lubrication for turbos. Of course, turbocharged engines create a lot more heat. So of course, oil changes are the #1 factor. And not doing the frequent oil changes as needed is one of the most important issues. Making sure you're using the right grade of oil like this. Make sure you've got the right weight of it. See, this one's a 040. synthetic typically, and the right additives. ACAE, A3B4, APISP. You'll notice a lot of those additives are very specific to the type of engine, whether you have engines maybe that have higher mileage, or even more specifically, direct injected engines now have a new grade specification of oil. Much more frequent oil changes are a guaranteed way to extend the life of your turbos because they do run hotter. And keeping clean oil around the bearings of your turbocharger, that in this car is located down in here, you'll notice it's all surrounded by plastics and metal, so it gets very hot. So the idea is to keep it as cool as possible, and in doing so, keeping fresh oil going through it all the time is guaranteed to help keep that turbocharger in your vehicle last a long, long time. Second way you're going to help extend the life of your turbo is not boost your engine. Now, a lot of people think, oh yeah, just a quick tune, quick chip. As a matter of fact, companies like Dynon and a lot of these OEMs do allow certain boost pressure changes and certain modifications to go into your vehicle. But one of the things that's likely going to destroy your turbo is adding too much boost pressure. So what ends up happening is there's a wastegate. A wastegate is a valve that allows boost pressure into the engine. But modifications can in fact create extra wear and tear on a turbocharger. A lot of these modifications do provide the ability for turbos to push more pressure in to the engine. And while that's less impactful on the turbo as it is on the engine, there's no doubt if you're running harder, running longer, and you're tuning your engine to run higher boost levels, running them longer, and unfortunately, in some cases, bad tunes don't even allow for better cooling. Good tunes will provide an electric water pump to give you more liquid and cooling through that turbo, but bad tunes won't. And unfortunately, a lot of times, a bad tuner can obviously create wear and tear on your turbo and can literally destroy your engine and your turbocharger. So the best way to keep both your engine intact and reliable, as well as your turbo to last as long as possible, is avoid any tunes. Leave them factory, leave them stock. If you want to extend the longevity, keep it the way the manufacturer intended, because that's likely the way you're going to get the majority of the life out of that vehicle. A third way you can extend the life of your turbo and make them last as long as the engine is looking after another simple fluid. A lot of the modern day turbos are coolant fed. So your cooling system here is extremely important, more than just keeping your engine cool. We know a lot of the majority of modern day engines now are all aluminum, or at least aluminum heads, and so overheating an engine can cause absolute destruction. Warped heads means machining. You can have major issues. You can still have burning oil, burning coolant. Having good cooling system maintenance is absolutely imperative as well. Make sure your cooling system is up to snuff. Make sure your fluids are up high enough. Make sure that coolant is of the right type as well as the right pH levels, and the fact that you should be changing and flushing your cooling system as per the manufacturer's instructions. The cooling system is actually providing cooling to that turbocharger. Where this old school turbo only uses oil, modern day turbos also use the antifreeze that runs through the turbo to actually help cool the bearings as well. It keeps the overall temperatures down. And so while a lot of these turbochargers do need a little cool down time, of course, when they shut the vehicle off, because the oil can coke, the fact is a lot of these cooling systems nowadays that run antifreeze or coolant through them actually do help drop the overall ambient temp, or the actual housing temperature of that particular turbo. And if you have bad coolant, that does create extra corrosion, extra buildup, and of course you won't get the proper flow through the turbocharger, which in fact is what you exactly need. The more buildup, crust, and corrosion does restrict. It's like our arteries. If you restrict the flow through our heart and through our arteries, that's not doing our body any good. So eating a lot of fatty foods creates all this extra plaque in our arteries. And I'm not a doctor, but that same kind of concept goes with a lot of this. Use garbage products, use crappy coolant, you don't do the maintenance, you're going to build up more of that plaque. So there's going to be restrictions, and of course poor cooling and poor lubrication means longevity is going down for that turbo. If you're liking the video so far, you're gonna love the rest of the channel. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and don't forget the notifications bell so you know when the next amazing video is coming. I have had a lot of vehicles, and this is literally the only turbocharger I've ever replaced, and it wasn't because it was shot. There was a slight little bit of issue, of course, a slight oil consumption. It was starting to use a wee bit of oil, but generally the turbo was still functioning quite well, and that was after an extensive amount of use on the track. This turbocharger was not given any mercy. It was abused. And I've had numerous turbo engines, and none of them have really failed on me. It's never been a problem. And a lot of people just hate turbos, but turbos can last forever. But a lot of it is the maintenance, and a lot of it is the treatment. If you have a turbocharged vehicle like probably 80–90% of the population out there today, the best thing that I can recommend is treat the vehicle right. So when you're starting your car up in the morning, let it run, let it warm up. So it's like anything, any vehicle needs a proper warm-up. And then, you know, it has a high idle for a minute, and then it idles down, it settles down and relaxes. Once it relaxes, you can drive the vehicle off casually. Do not drive it hard. Do not race the engine. Do not accelerate hard, flat out acceleration. Let the vehicle slowly build up temperature. Drive gradually to where it is you've got to get to. By the time you hit the freeway, your vehicle's probably almost up to temp. At that point, you can drive it as you normally would. So it's all about the proper warm-up. Once you've properly reach the operating temperature, you're good to go. Then you know you've got oiling, you've got coolant, everything's up to snuff, and that turbocharger is actually getting all of the cooling and lubrication that it needs. When you pull up on the driveway and you want to turn the car off, that's one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people tend to make. Naturally aspirated engines, it doesn't matter. Turn the car off when you get home. Turbocharger engines, you do need a bit of a cool down. And I know there's people out there, I've had people argue with me and say, look, you've got a cooling system now that actually runs through these turbos, and with coolant going through the turbos, even when you shut your car off, the coolant, sometimes a lot of these electric water pumps still runs coolant through the turbo. That is true, that happens, and that does help. But the fact is the turbo is no longer spinning, and the oil, as long as that turbo is spinning and that housing is spinning like that, that oil will not cake in there. As soon as that turbo comes to a stop like that, then all of a sudden you've got all that hot oil around the bearing, and it sort of locks in there and it starts to cake and coke around the bearings. And yes, I know the cooling system does help to drop the overall temperature of the turbo, but if you've been running it hard and the oil is still extremely hot, and with the turbocharger and the turbine stopping, you're now begging for that turbo bearings to actually seize up completely, regardless of the fact that you do have cooling system that continues to circulate coolant sometimes through the turbo even once the engine is off. That doesn't change the fact that the oil is still extremely hot, the turbo's not turning, and you will have a problem over time with oil coking on the turbo. One thing you've noticed, a lot of big diesel engines, and one of the reasons a lot of these Freightliners run and run and run, well, diesel engines can tolerate a lot of boost. But the other thing is turbos. Why are their turbos last? Because a lot of people that run these diesel engines idle them for a long time. So it's that idle time that allows them to warm up, cool down, and a lot of people that are driving professionally, these semi-drivers, just let it idle for a period of time at low RPM, and now you have a condition that's perfect for longevity for that turbo. So the best thing I would recommend is proper warm-up, operating, and of course cool down. And there's ultimately another preventative measure. You know the old saying, an ounce of prevention? Well, you know the rest. I mean, if you're talking about buying a turbocharged engine, buy a turbocharged engine from a manufacturer that has been doing it for a long time. Look at Porsche. They've been designing turbo engines. They've raced turbo engines. Ferrari, they've been doing turbo engines for quite some time. Okay, great. Not everybody has that kind of money or even wants to spend that kind of money. But there's a lot of OEMs that have been doing turbo engines for quite some time. Think even BMW. Back in 2007, they had a real struggle with their N54, but they've worked out a lot of those bugs. They now have a pretty solid, robust turbocharged engine. Think even some of the specific RS model Audis, RS3 or the TTRS with that turbocharged 5-cylinder engine. That engine is legendary for racing. So think about the OEMs that create turbocharging engines and have done it for a long time versus some of those manufacturers that are kind of new to the game, or they're coming out of nowhere and all of a sudden they have this turbo engine. There's probably a high probability that those are the ones that are going to have more issues. Pick the manufacturer that has been doing it for a long time. So I found following some of these rules saved me thousands of dollars over the years as I've owned many vehicles with turbochargers. If you want to understand about saving money right there by buying the right cars, check that video as well. You're going to want to follow that because I give you some of the best options out there if you're worried about your hard-earned dollars. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. Catch you then. Bye-bye.